But if you can't charge people with the crime, if you can't charge them and they're released like that, then what can you do? What can you do? Okay, guys, what is going on with crime in our nation? I mean, across the board, Chicago, Oakland, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Baltimore, small towns, big towns, rural areas. It's like we are in small little war zones throughout our country. And I'm not saying that, to be alarmist. I'm saying that with reality. We're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about the Democrats and what a bunch of liars they are. And what's really weird is how some Democratic officials, I'm not going to say all of them. I'm going to backtrack that because I know Democrats, some who I think are brilliant and wonderful people. I know it's hard for you guys to believe this. But they're not in agreement with their party's leadership. And I think people all across the country are waking up. People in Oakland, people in Chicago. And we're going to talk about that because 47 people were shot in Chicago over the weekend across the city, 5 fatally, one of them being a mother of 2. These are our communities. This is our children. They are Americans. These are American cities, one of the greatest nations on earth. And why are we facing this? And why do we have leadership that is so flawed and failed against us that when I think about it, and I've been traveling a lot of the country. I'm leaving right after this podcast. I'm heading to California. I'm going to be covering a story there in Oakland for Sean Hannity, and I'm going to do it for the podcast as well. But the thing is that why are we getting worse and not better? All you have to do is look up at Washington, D.C. Look at that swamp. Look at how little our leadership cares for our children, for our people, for our nation. The kind of corruption that we have only seen in banana republics now exists right here in the United States. Under Democratic leadership, our great cities are under siege by criminals, filth, graffiti, narcotics, and our children are the ones that are suffering, and so are we. And that's what we're going to be talking about on the Sarah Carter Show, because you and I together, we're going to find solutions to these problems. God help us if we don't. Gold and silver allow you to protect what you've worked so hard for, and it gives you back the control and the privacy that you need. And that's why I love Allegiance Gold, because I tell you all the time, diversify, diversify, diversify. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. We've learned that lesson, right? In America, at least I hope we have. We've seen what woke corporations can do, and we've also seen what we can do to woke corporations. I think Bud Light's suffering a little bit right now. But we want to be able to protect our money, and we want to be able to protect our children. And Allegiance Gold can help you protect your IRA and your 401k, guess what? With physical gold and silver. Or have it delivered securely right to your front door. Get $5,000 of free silver on a qualifying purchase when you tell them that Sarah sent you. Let me say that again. $5,000 of free silver on a qualifying purchase when you tell them that Sarah sent you. So don't wait, call or click today. 1-877-702-7272. That's 877-702-SARA, S-A-R-A. Or go to protectwithsarah.com. No H, that's protectwithsarah, S-A-R-A.com. We can't control the Biden administration, folks, but we can prepare. 877-702-7272. That's 877-702-SARA, S-A-R-A. Or protectwithsarah.com. Is this the worst crime that we've ever experienced in our lifetimes? For me, I really believe it is. I remember, being a kid, and I remember, like in the 70s and stuff. Yeah, I know it's hard to believe. It seems like ancient times ago. But, and in the 80s, like we were dealing with, crime, yes. And there were, mob bosses, and we had to deal with the mafia, and we had to deal with, these extremists, leftist radicals that were trying to blow things up in America. There was a time in America where there was domestic terrorism. There really was. And there was kind of crazy things going on, but it was particular groups, right? Or there was, heroin dealers or drug dealers, or, you got the Al Pacino movies and stuff. And that was kind of the beginning of the corruption, right? In our country on a criminal level, like the big ones. Maybe prohibition too. But what we're seeing now, and that's going way back, but what we're seeing now is a kind of a phenomena spreading through our communities, a failure of families, a failure of role models within families, a failure of leadership within our communities. Because even if there's not a father or a mother around, there was a time where you could look up to people in your communities, right? Where certain children would look up to people like cops or, leaders in their community and have someone to guide them. In the church, for example, played a huge role in that. We don't do that anymore. We're becoming more and more secular. Our children are feeling alone. They live a life inside a phone and in a computer, and they feel disconnected from their families. And there are so many children in so many neighborhoods that don't even have a father, no role model, no mother. And even if they do, some of those kids, their parents are drug addicts, or some of those children, hey, look, even if your parents are working, my mom worked. My dad died when I was 13, just before I was 13, actually. And my mother had to go back to work, but she was there for us. She was there for me and my brother. And she worked in a factory. She also worked cleaning a rest home. It was not like, I didn't live the high life, guys. I didn't live the high life. I was pretty excited when I got a little bit of money, or when I was 15 and I could get my first job and my mom signed off. I could go to work when I was 15 and I would, get my clothes for school. My mom used what little money my dad saved to make sure that my brother and I could go to a private school. She, got a deal on it because of her income. But she didn't want me going to the public school in my neighborhood because she was terrified of what would happen to us in high school. So it isn't about poverty. Don't let anyone lie to you. It's like the big lie, like, oh, abortion is necessary for people that are in poverty. No, poverty does not make you a bad parent. What makes you a bad parent is when you no longer care, or when you're so separated from your child's life, they have nowhere to go. They have no guidance, no moral guidance. No church on Sunday, or mosque, or wherever you want to take your kids, whatever your belief system is. Go to synagogue, no guidance, no leadership in the community. That's what we're seeing. I couldn't believe this video that I saw the other day. It was so gut-wrenching. I was going through Twitter, and there was this elderly woman just doing her own thing, minding her own business. And a young man comes out, a big guy. And you can't, and I'm telling you from the description that they put on the video. And he's walking in front of her, and you don't think anything's going to happen. And as soon as they pass each other, the guy clocks this elderly woman right in the face with his fist, knocks her off the sidewalk into the street. And there's like a street camera that's videotaping this. And I jumped when I saw that, because I was thinking to myself, can you imagine? What PTSD does? When I was in the war zone, one of the reasons for PTSD is you're always wondering if something's going to come at you from nowhere, right? You're going to get hit by a bomb, or an ID is going to go off. So you're constantly on edge. You're constantly on guard. Well, now imagine living in a community like in Chicago, like this past weekend. Imagine being a kid in Chicago and 47 people have been shot In one party, a woman was killed and 8 others were hurt. It was North Lawndale in Chicago. Imagine wondering where the bullets are coming from, living with that kind of anxiety every day. Imagine walking to school and, gang members are teasing you and pushing you. And I saw it myself. Because when I was younger, and I told you, and I lived in Pomona, and I worked one summer, I remember in South Central, I was working at a church with foster kids in South Central LA. And I was young. My friend's brother was a minister at one of the churches. And I remember how terrifying it was for some of the children living in the communities. I remember going to the Boys and Girls Club and volunteering some time, in Los Angeles. And, and I was pretty young. And I remember kids being dropped off as young as, 5 years old in the summer. And we couldn't stop them from leaving and going back out on the streets. And some of the kids, their parents were addicts, heroin, other drugs. And these kids had no place to go, no food, no guidance, no shelter. And, for all of us out there, or all of you or me or anybody who can think like, well, this isn't going to affect my community because we don't live in those neighborhoods. It always does. It always does, because a child from those communities, eventually what happens is they either find a way to save themselves and come out of it. God or something intervenes, or someone intervenes. Or they end up in gangs. They end up with guns in their hands. They end up robbing. They end up using drugs. They end up on the streets. They end up being the forgotten ones. And they end up being the people that eventually take someone else's life. It doesn't matter if you live in that community or not. This is America. Right? This is America. I thought this was really fascinating. So crime is so bad in the United States. This story, it says, well, this is embarrassing. Mexico warns citizens about DC crime. And I just got back from Washington, DC and New York City. I was there last week, both New York City and Washington, DC. And I was blown away by just what I was seeing. The streets have gotten worse. The homelessness problem, of course, is exacerbated. The drug addiction is exacerbated. These are cities run by Democrats that seem to be turning a blind eye, not only in DC, but in New York City. As I left the studio from doing the big weekend show, the big Sunday show, I was there with Tammy Bruce. I got to throw some props out to my gal Tammy and Griff Jenkins, Jimmy Fallon, and I. As I left, there was a man pulling his pants down. There were cops right there. They couldn't, he was pulling his pants down, sticking his hands in his pants. He had no shirt on. He had half of his bottom showing, and he was walking towards us, then walking away. He appeared to be mentally ill. And as a woman, that's pretty terrifying. I don't want a guy pulling his pants down in the middle of the street coming towards me. I'm going to take care of myself. Yes. But we had to have security. We had to have security walk us. Now imagine that kind of PTSD I'm talking to you about, where you're terrified of walking out your front door, right? You're terrified of walking to school. You living on the edge all the time. We should not be living like this. Our children should not be living like this. We, as the United States of America, should not have the Mexican consulate warning its citizens that visiting Washington, D.C. is dangerous, that crime is so out of control that they need to exercise special care. And this isn't just Mexico getting back at us. Mexico has a serious problem with crime, especially in its border cities and even in some of its tourism towns. But the focus is on narcotics. It is very rare. And I have traveled through Guatemala and El Salvador. And I'm telling you this. I'm telling you this honestly. And now that, El Salvador with Bukele, President Bukele has cleaned up El Salvador and just thrown people in prison left and right, especially MS-13 gang members. But I've never walked through the streets of Guatemala and worried about being clocked by one of the guys on the streets. I've never seen, like I've seen here, massive shootouts, except for when I was on the border in Mexico, when the cartels were fighting each other, much like our gang members are fighting here. But I've never seen it exacerbated. I've never worried about a Mexican citizen walking past me or an El Salvadorian or Guatemalan and clocking me in the face. Or, one of my relatives. I've never seen that. Washington, D.C., like many other cities across America, are experiencing a very serious crime wave. In June, the city council passed an emergency crime bill in Washington, D.C. that, needless to say, doesn't exactly look like it was written by Black Lives Matter. That's what Hot Air says. It has gotten so bad that the instinct to embrace every criminal, throw a parade for them, and hand them your wallet wasn't strong enough to overcome the natural human desire not to be mugged. That is so true. And in fact, it's gotten so bad in Oakland that the NAACP is calling on Oakland to declare a state of emergency. That just happened over crime in the city, which the organization said has gotten so out of control that everyone is in danger. I know people that don't even want to do security jobs in Oakland because it is so dangerous. I know people that don't even want to work in Oakland, a beautiful city like that has just turned into a pit. Let me read this to you. In a letter released on July 27th, the NAACP and the Acts Full Gospel Church blamed everyone from the city district attorney to the movement to defund the police for contributing to a heyday for Oakland criminals. Well, let me tell you something, citizens of Oakland and citizens of California, which was once my state. Vote these people out. Vote them out. Tell them, like the NAACP is right now, and Acts of Full Gospel Church, and every single church in California, and every single, doesn't matter what denomination, if you're every single synagogue, every single mosque, every single whatever you believe in, as long as you're not a Satanist, I get on the bandwagon with this and say it is unacceptable. They said in their letter, we are in crisis and elected leaders must declare a state of emergency and bring resources together from the city, the county, and the state to end this crisis. We are 500 police officers short, and that is a fact. The same thing is happening in San Francisco. I talked to police there, and they told me the same. In fact, roughly around the same number of police officers short, right? They just can't patrol. So it doesn't matter if you got 1,000 cops, right? Only a certain number of them are going to be out on the streets actually working the beat. You've got logistics, you've got people in the office. That's what they count in the full number. But if you can't charge people with the crime, if you can't charge them and they're released like that, then what can you do? The failure of our leadership and the failure rests with us as well. We all want to be nice. We want to give people a chance. I've covered gang-ridden communities and tough neighborhoods for a long time. And right, there are some children there that are victimized over and over again because, gosh, it's so horrible and tragic. They were unfortunate enough to be born into a family of addicts or in a gang-ridden neighborhood, and God help these poor children that eventually end up lost souls. But we have to have laws. We have to have law and order. We have to charge people with crime, or guess what? They will continue to commit the crimes. And then other people will say, well, guess what? Crime does pay. I mean, no one's going to arrest me. I could steal $900 from the CVS or the Walgreens. No one's going to stop me. I could walk out of a Walmart with a basket full of groceries. No one's going to stop me. We have to hold people accountable. Children want to be held accountable. Yes, they do. People want to be held accountable. Communities need to be held accountable. Countries and nation states need to be held accountable, because that's the only way that you even know that somebody cares about you. You know what? The NAACP woke up and said, oh shit, nobody cares about our communities anymore. We're in a state of emergency. Our children are suffering. Our communities are suffering because not everybody in Oakland is a bad person. There are more good people than bad in all of these communities. But the good people can't wage war with the bad on the streets. The problem is we have to have police officers in these streets. We can't be vigilantes, right? And that really isn't a problem. That's what we need to be doing. The problem is we have district attorneys and leaders that are taking advantage of our communities, impoverished communities, whatever you want to call them, gang-ridden communities, immigrant communities. They're taking advantage of the people, and they're not leading people in the right direction. They're taking them down a massive rabbit hole of hell. It is doom. Just like the Oakland NAACP says, it is doom. It is a public safety crisis, and it's putting everybody's life in danger. Folks, My Pillow has a 20th anniversary sale. Yes. Why? Because Mike Lindell loves America. He has an American company, and he wants to give you the best products that he can made in America. My dogs love it. In fact, I've got all 4 dogs in my studio today, but they're all crashed asleep. Some of them underneath my desk on their My Pillow pillows. And right now, my other ones are actually laying on the couch, and there's one laying directly behind me. So I don't know what they were doing before this, but they're wiped out and they're laying on the My Pillows. You guys can have your pups on your My Pillows too. You can order them now. But guess what? Right now we have a queen size My Pillow, which is regularly $69.98. Now you're going to get them for $19.98. You just can't beat that. Only $10 more for a king size at mypillow.com/Carter, CARTER. Use CARTERY because I get to do this podcast because I have people sponsor this podcast. If you're going to order from Mike Lindell, use my promo code Carter or call 1-800-685-7221. Go to mypillow.com/Carter. Use promo code Carter to get the queen size My Pillow for only $19.98 during Mike's My Pillow 20th anniversary sale, or call 1-800-685-7221. There you'll find not only this amazing offer, but also deep discounts on all My Pillow slippers, pet beds, blankets, and so much more. Get the best night's sleep at mypillow.com/Carter and use promo code Carter to call 1-800-685-7221. mypillow.com/Carter, promo code Carter. Folks, be safe out there. Don't let the Democrats, these weird leaders, I'm not talking about you folks out there who might be Democrat listening to me, but the weird leadership, and even some on the Republican side, lead you in the wrong direction. We have our own minds. We are not sheep. We are not sheep. Say that again. Say it in your head over and over again. We can make up our own minds about what's best for our families, what's best for our communities, and what is best for our country. And we can work together to make that change. But remember, this is important. It's about your community. It's about our community. It's about our country. And it is time to protect it. If you love today's show and want even more of the Sara Carter Show, make sure you rate this podcast 5 stars and subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast app. Follow me on Truth at Sara Carter Official, on Twitter at Sara Carter DC, and on Instagram at SCarterDC. God bless you. God bless our great nation. God bless our children and every child in this country that is facing hardship and living in communities that are overburdened and overrun with crime. May they all be safe and make it safe to school this fall. And God bless the great state of Texas. I'm so glad to be back, even if it is only for 5 hours. Heading to Oakland tonight. See you there.